A few times a year, usually someone will pull me aside for a bit of a private conversation that goes something like this. You know, emotions, feelings at work totally get in the way, right? I mean, if we could just reach a place at work where there were no more emotions, we could get so much more done, right? Now, if I don't know the person, I know the best thing I can do is to keep listening, to understand what's behind what they're asking me about so that maybe I can support them. But if I do know them, usually my reaction is, "Hi, it's David, and welcome to the Leadership Library for people like you who keep dreaming of better outcomes and better ways to do things and are impatient to bring those things to life." And of course, I'm not going to laugh in someone's face if that's their question, because it's actually, they're making a legitimate observation. There are plenty of emotions that can really hold us back. Anger, resentment, fear of failure, defensiveness, go on down the list. Those can all hold back the person who's experiencing that emotion as well as the people they work with. We need to take responsibility for our emotional reactions and not just spray everybody else with them. So of course, it's much easier when the emotions that people are experiencing are things like optimism and engagement and enthusiasm. But if you're going to lead and create those great things that you envision, you need to know at least two things about emotions or moods or morale or attitude, whatever you'd like to call it. First is that our brains are wired to experience emotions. A healthy brain cannot not experience emotion. There is no place that is void of emotion. It's really a matter of more understanding them and being able to manage them. Because emotions are like fuel, and they actually fuel the actions. Which emotion you're experiencing will fuel the actions, either ones that are helpful or not helpful. That's why I teach programs about resilience. It's because as the stakes get higher, the emotions get higher. So it's more a matter of learning how to manage them and where do you direct that energy than trying to shut them down completely. And the second thing to know about emotions is that those leaders who learn to understand and respect how emotions work get really good at directing that fuel, that energy behind emotions towards the actions that get things done and help others, the people on their teams, do the same. And by the way, those are the leaders that everybody wants to work for because they make the people around them better. Everybody likes to get those results. So let's just go to the whiteboard so I can show you what I mean. I'm going to assume two things about you as we have this conversation about emotions. First, you already have skill in the world of emotions, otherwise you wouldn't have had the success that you've already had to lead people to big change. And second is that you have some respect for this world of emotions, otherwise you would have shut off the video by now. And with that, I want to help you deepen your understanding, to grind your lens even further so that you can have more success, especially when you really are going for big things. Now, I'm going to use the word emotion today, but you could use lots of different words for it. You could call it moods, feelings, attitudes, morale, disposition. All of those words are attempting to describe this inner experience that each of us has, not necessarily the same experience, but it's an inner experience that tends to shift and move over time in response or reaction to circumstances, comments, moments in time, experiences that we're having in life. So they will move, and I can't promise that any two of us will have the same emotional experience, even in the same situation. And also, now that we understand neurodiversity, it's very possible that some of us don't even have the same portfolio of emotional experiences available to us. But even with that, all of those complications, what I'm going to share with you today is something that you can put to use right away, and it will help you be even more effective in bringing those dreams that you're impatient to bring to life into action. So when I talk about it, I'm going to use the word emotion because the word motion is in it. And there's a strong connection between emotions and motion. Because in my experience, emotions are actually, in the world of motion or behaviors or actions, they're actually pre-motions. Meaning, the emotional experience that someone is having dictates specific actions, motions, behaviors that they will take, but also shuts down the possibility of other ones. And if you then picked a different mood or emotion, that emotion would open up a different array of available actions, motions, and shut down some of the others that used to be available. So let's get specific. Let me give you some examples of what I mean by that, because this is going to be useful. Example one. Here are two emotions that are not necessarily opposite of each other, but quite different from each other. One is the emotion of enthusiasm. The other is the emotion of a fear of failure. So if I'm in the emotion of enthusiasm, this circle, these are meant to be identical circles that represent the whole sphere, the whole repertoire of actions that would be available to an individual or to a team. And let's say that what's open here are the actions that are actually available to a person who has enthusiasm. So a person with enthusiasm might have actions available like, hey, let's rally the troops. Let's engage in conversations about possibilities. Let's talk optimistically about the future. Let's get into action and go get things done. Those are all actions that might be available to a person who's in the mood of enthusiasm. What probably is not available to a person in the mood of enthusiasm is actions like shutting down, sitting on their hands, whining, complaining, trying to sabotage other people. Those aren't moves that a person with enthusiasm would take. So enthusiasm opens up some actions, shuts down others. Take now a different emotion, not necessarily opposite, but a fear of failure. Okay, fear of failure is going to shut down a lot of emotions that might be in the realm of enthusiasm. I'm not trying to make these exactly opposite of each other because we don't know, but some of the things, fear of failure, I'm not going to be the one who jumps into action. I'm probably not going to be as optimistic. I'm not going to try to rally the team to get going, to get into action or talk about possibilities. Fear of failure is going to shut down some of those actions, some of which would have been available in enthusiasm. Again, not a perfect match, but it will open up other possible moves if I have a fear of failure. I might be one who is more hesitant. I might make CYA moves. I might wait to see how somebody else does it first before I take a chance. Or I might whine and complain and talk pessimistically about the future. Again, I'm making these up, but understand that each emotion will open up some and shut down other activities, and then a different emotion will look different in what it can produce. Let's do a second emotion, or a second pair of emotions. Here's the second example, trust versus distrust. Again, these circles are meant to be identical. They represent the identical possible portfolio of actions that the same person might take. When they're trusting someone, there are some actions that would be available. They might say, yeah, let's get started right now. Oh, we don't need to sign a contract. Let's figure that out later. Let me give you my money. Let me give you my wallet. Here, take this. Or let's do this deal together. As opposed to the things that they wouldn't do. They might be less likely to say, I need a background check about that. Or no, we're going to need a really lengthy contract for that. Or no, I'm not going to give you any money. I don't want to get started. Those are things that would be less likely to them. I'm just making these up, of course. When it's distrust, it's not necessarily the exact opposite of trust, so I didn't draw it to be exactly the opposite. But when I'm distrustful, there are some actions that I won't take. I probably won't get started right away. I probably will need more information. I probably won't be telling other people, hey, you should work with this person, you should buy this product, whatever it is, if I don't trust it. There are some other actions I might say, be careful. I might say, let's make sure that we send this to the lawyers to review this, or absolutely, let's not do any business with these people. That might be something that you would shut some things down. So again, it's not a perfect science, but generally you understand that emotions are pre-motions. So one thing to understand is when somebody is not behaving in a way that you hoped they were, one question you can ask is, what's their emotional point of view on this? Maybe the reason they won't take the actions that I was hoping for is because the mood doesn't make it possible for them or makes it really difficult for them. And that's mood or emotion, using it as a respectful understanding that we all have an inner barometer that guides us. And in this instance, emotion equals pre-motion. You can think of a host of different emotions and match them up to actions, or think about actions that people are or aren't taking, and then ask, what's the emotional state? So hopefully it's more clear that certain emotions will lead to motions or actions or behaviors and shut others down, like we talked about here. But there's another layer of it. Think about, there are multiple layers, but a couple of examples. One is that there are collective emotions. Think about how teams have different emotions and different actions. The Maori All Blacks from New Zealand, the rugby team, compared to the emotion or the mood of the LA Lakers. Or communities have emotions. Think about a community of students at chef school versus a community of students who are getting their degree in social work. Again, it's not that all the emotions are mutually exclusive, but they're probably going to have different emotions that are going to lead them to take different actions and shut down other actions that wouldn't be available. Families. The family that you grew up in had a general mood or emotion that probably went on from day to day. And the family across the street probably had a different one that made the actions that they took different, or the actions that were possible to them different than the ones that you would, and vice versa. Cities have different moods or emotions. Los Angeles versus New York versus Seattle versus Paris versus Mumbai. So that can affect it. Departments have moods. Sales versus engineering versus risk versus marketing versus the developers in tech. Each of them have their own moods that will open up some emotions, actions, behaviors, and shut down others, which is why sometimes when you encounter someone from a different collective group and they are not acting the way you expect them to, maybe it's because they live in an emotional soup that just doesn't make that possible, or that makes something else possible that you think is completely unacceptable. So understand that collective groups of people who come together can actually have a shared emotional state that will open possibilities of actions and shut down others. It can even go further. You can look at it from another perspective, points in time. Think about the emotion or the mood that you might feel on a Monday morning compared to you, the very same person, in the mood that you would have on Friday afternoon. What actions are available to you on Monday morning? What pre-motions are you set up for on Monday morning? And what ones are more difficult to take versus Friday afternoon? What's possible for you versus what's not possible? Since we all lived through a pandemic, think about the mood that you had 2 days or 2 weeks before the pandemic started to really affect your life. And then what happened during the pandemic, especially at the very, very beginning when it was unknown? What was your emotion then? And then what is your emotion now that we're hopefully on the other side of that pandemic? And in each instance, with a different emotional state, some actions pre-pandemic were available that were different than during the pandemic, especially right at the very beginning of it. The actions that were possible or not possible had changed. And then after the pandemic, perhaps it had gone back to pre, but for many people, it's a whole new set. They're in a different mood, and the actions that are available to them are not the same as pre-pandemic. And the ones that they won't take anymore are also different because, in part, the emotional state has changed, and that affects the actions that they can take and the actions that you can take. So there are many other ways to sort emotions. These are just 2 examples or 3 examples: by mood, by the collective emotions shared, and then by points in time. All of them can affect your emotional state and what actions are available and not available. The same is true for all of the teams and the people that you're leading. Okay, let's make sure that you can take this back to your real world and the change that you're leading. While there are many factors that influence what emotion that you or I are experiencing, one that you can get really good at and have a lot of success with is understanding the connection between the stories that I tell or that you tell or that someone else tells and the emotion that that person telling the story has. There's a correlation many times. Think about this for yourself. What was the story that you told yourself this Monday morning and the corresponding emotion? And what was the story that you might tell yourself on Friday afternoon and its corresponding emotion? If the stories were different, more than likely the emotions will be different, and those pre-emotions will dictate the behaviors that are available or not available. I know you have skill and success already at leading people through difficult times and helping them navigate that emotional terrain. And to help you apply what's in this video, here's one way to approach it. First, ask yourself, what are the results and outcomes that you are impatient to bring to life? And if that's what you are working to produce, then what are the actions and behaviors from you and your team that need to happen consistently for those results to come to life? And then, if those are the actions and behaviors that you want to see consistently, what are the pre-motions that would make those behaviors and actions more likely and more easy? And then you can contrast it with what are the pre-motions that would make them less likely and more difficult. And now you know what you're aiming for. And then if we want to apply story as one of the drivers for emotions or pre-motions, then what are the stories that you and your team would need to be telling about the work, about the past, about the future, about the possibilities, about what it can do for the world, about themselves and their abilities, about each other. And then you can help them shape those stories that will lead to those pre-emotions, that will make those actions that will be productive and helpful more likely and easier to happen so that you can produce those outcomes. Now you probably better understand why I keep wanting to help you grind those lenses in the world of emotions or pre-motions. Yep, they can be incredibly inconvenient, and they will remain that way for people who don't respect them, who don't work to understand them or know how to apply them. But for those who do respect them, who work to understand them and to build your skills of how to apply them, you develop almost secret powers that other people don't understand. And more importantly, you're able to have a disproportionate impact on the things that you care about the most. I can't wait to hear how you apply this. And you know somebody who will benefit from this very video, so please share it with them. I'll see you in the next video.